I'm also watching this rain headed right for me, and I don't have a way to protect this. I'm probably half a mile from the car, so I might try to get over to the car. Okay, got it. I got this all boxed up again, I think. This looks good. It's all loaded. Dark slides are correct. I'll put a thingy on it. Stop raining at least. At one point today it was both raining and snowing, and there was sunshine out all at the same time, so go figure. You can see the beacon out there. Here you can see it through the ground glass. I've got it nice and sharp. I'm not going to take this photo, but I'm just kind of playing with this a little bit. That might be too advanced for me. Well, I found some stuff that's kind of interesting. Some grass. I've taken pictures of these before, but I'm also watching this rain headed right for me, and I don't have a way to protect this. I'm probably half a mile from the car, so I might try to get over to the car and call this an experiment that maybe has run its course. Anyway, these are beautiful though. I think I'd really like to get some shots of this grass because I can get all of it in focus, like the whole plane, so it'd be kind of fun to play with that. But I've got rain coming. Yeah. Now the part that makes me laugh about this whole adventure is that there's so many little pieces and processes to get in order and get right. And here I'm trying to both use a new camera that I'm not familiar with and trying to film it at the same time. Now here we go. It's raining on the ground glass. Actually, it's hailing. So I didn't think that one through. And this is the funny part. You can see blue sky through there. I'd stay out in it if I had a way to not kill my camera. There's so much hail, it looks like snow. Yeah, fun time. I just heard someone say that it's super rare that it's this foggy. But I'm gonna go into that mist on the old Scenic Highway, looking for waterfalls and columnar basalt. Man, you're like driving over these bridges and you have no idea how high up you are until you look down. This is not doing it justice. But that is probably, it's gotta be 100 feet, 150 feet to the water. Wow. Epic. Okay, so I'm set up here. Just gonna take a quick shot down into the valley. See how that goes. Notice a little bit too much weird silt. Well, that was fun. So some nice people I met out there. The nice thing with these view cameras is that everyone is curious about it. And they sort of know instinctually what it is, but everyone has questions. And there was a nice man that I talked to that said that the conversation we had made his day. So I thought that was kind of a nice conclusion for this little outing. So I spent some additional time taking more pictures with the camera just to get used to it, and I felt like I had something better to show. So here's that conclusion. I have a few prints that I'm actually pretty happy with. I wanted the foreground the background to be in focus. And I got that through a little bit of tilt on the front lens. So, and this is an 11 by 14 print, fiber-based, silver halide. This is a complete darkroom artifact. This is old school black and white printing. And I think it turned out great. So the other print I made was of my daughter. And this is the very first picture I took on the camera, and I'm pretty happy with this. The thing I like about this is that I did no retouching on this at all. This is just directly out of the camera. 4x5 darkroom print. Some of I did see the digital scan at first. There's a little more detail in the background, but I actually don't want that. This printed really well. I have nice blacks here, good skin tone, nice depth of field. This is wide open, 5.6. So again, really happy with this as well. What have I learned over this little bit of time? This is an art form like anything. I mean, you have to practice at it. It requires effort and experimentation. It's a totally different thing to use this than it is to build this. I'll just say that. Like, I find it sort of simple to actually build this mechanism. I found it much more difficult to make art out of it. So I think that's just a skill you have to nurture and develop. So over time, I'm sure I'll get better at it. The other thing is, like, what equipment do you have to have? What have I added since I bought this? So the camera itself, again, I built most of it. There's the lens and film holders, which I bought, but the rest of it I built. What else do you need? A good light meter. This is an incident meter that I've had since, I think, 2002, maybe I bought this. So it's an old L358 incident meter. It doesn't have the spot capability. As an incident meter, it's excellent. I used this for both of these images, and it just nailed my exposure. So just great. I will probably end up with a spot meter variant at some point. They're not cheap. It's a little bit of an investment. I tried the app with my phone. It's okay. It's hard to get the exposures right. I felt like it was usually underexposing. So I might get to a point where I'm able to sort of evaluate a scene and figure it out. But a good light meter is really an important thing. A loop to focus. This is a really cheap loop. I'm going to upgrade this at some point, but it does actually work on the ground glass. It gets me there. I may end up with a better one over time. We'll see. A good notebook. I've just written down notes about when I take the images, what I did for exposure, what sort of environment existed at the time. That's important as well. Obviously, film holders you'll need. I ended up with, I think, 5. Yes, I can hold 10 sheets of film total. Obviously, a cable release. This is important. Oops, I just scratched the print. Cable release, a tape measure. I'll probably end up with a cloth one at some point, but this one has millimeters, which I find to be a little more useful when you're looking at bellows extension. But a cloth one might be a good investment at some point. So in terms of equipment, that's the core basic things you'll need. Process is everything. I think having a flow from when you load the film, when you expose the film, the process of when to open the lens, when to cock the shutter, all these, when to do the focus, how to lock everything down, how to make sure everything's zeroed out, calibrated. I mean, there's a whole flow there that I think you'll sort of develop, but it takes time to get that. You have to make mistakes along the way. You're going to make mistakes, I should say, and that's just part of the process. You're going to burn film up. Already, I've had the first 4 sheets I loaded with this thing, 100%, totally fine. Then I had a couple misfires where I must have loaded it wrong, where I think the film was on the rails for the dark slide. In some way, it was hard to see when I was loading it, but when I extracted the dark slide and then tried to put it back in, I couldn't, and it ended up, the film fell out of the holder into the camera. So that was awkward. That happened twice, and I'm trying to figure out a better way to load to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think there's a couple ways. The big thing is if you can feel the 2 different rails here, then you know that the film is below it. But anyway, I'm working on that flow. The other thing is scanning negatives. I think a lot of people do scan. especially online on YouTube. I see a lot of people that take pictures of these and then figure out how to get it into the digital realm and then share it. And I'm not convinced that's necessarily the path I want to take. I really like the prints. I guess for me, it would be develop the film, make a contact sheet, pick the images you like, print them. These are professional darkroom prints, archival. These will last as long as the history of photography. these are these are really overkill, but I really like them. They're fiber based, so they have a little bit of a wrinkle to them, but again, they just look incredible. And for me, the flow, that's the kind of flow I would do for now. I may change my mind, but make the exposures, develop a film, make the contact sheets, decide what you want to print. If anything, maybe they didn't turn out. But the good thing with these is I can elect to do these. I don't even have to do it myself. I'm not really super interested in becoming a printer. Even developing film doesn't interest me a lot. I used to do it with 35 millimeter, but I think you can do this without actually doing a lot of the chemistry process, and you end up with these beautiful prints. These are about $60 each, so they're not cheap, but they're done again by a professional that knows what they're doing. I'm not sure all the processes that went into this, but the results are amazing. So I think that's fine. What it does mean is that you're going to end up with all marginal costs, and that's a little bit different than if you had a digital camera and you have literally zero marginal cost for each photo taken. There's no, it's just digital images on a chip, and then you store it on a disk forever. So once you made that initial investment, you have no cost per image. With this setup, you have a little bit of investment up front. I'm probably $500 in if you don't count any of the time of building this camera, but for the lenses, equipment, not counting the light meter. So $500 initial investment. And then everything is marginal. So if I take images, it's $2 per sheet of black and white Ilford film. Developing is like $6.25. So let's just say all in with a contact sheet, you're probably $10 per sheet of film. I'm not shooting a lot, and each one is planned out for the most part. So it's not like I'm going out there and firing off exposures. I'm usually going out with a mission and making an exposure, or a few, four maybe, then coming home. So your costs are marginal, but remember that you didn't do a lot of initial investment. So I think it's a completely manageable process, and I wouldn't feel too bad about splurging on the prints. Again, I didn't buy any darkroom equipment. I have no chemical processing capabilities yet, and this I could see doing this for a while until I either decide this isn't something I want to do, and then at the end of this, I have the only thing left is I have a camera and some film and some prints. I don't have any darker material. I don't have any chemicals. I don't have any extra stuff. So that's kind of the nice thing about taking this approach. But everyone's unique and everyone has their own way to do things. Find a good lab. That's another thing. Blue Moon Cameras here in Portland. I love those guys. They're really a great lab and a great store. I think it's all film products they deal with there. So I would go that route if you can find a good lab. Their lab turnaround's about a week. I think I've had a couple turnarounds that were faster than that, but for the most part, you just sort of have to pace yourself with that flow. So finding a good lab, I think, is really key. And thankfully, they still exist, and you can still get product. You can still get film. All of the supplies you can still find. So I think one way to address this is that. So what is this like? And I would say this process of this art form is more like painting, and I think that's the switch I think that has sort of occurred is that my DSLR, I have a great digital camera. It takes great images. I have a collection now of something like 30,000 images on disk that I'm dragging around. A lot of it's junk, but I can take images, as I said, that have zero marginal cost other than the storage and wear and tear on the shutter maybe, which means that I take a lot more images. And I think it has its use. I think if I were a professional photographer, I don't think I'd have a choice. I think I'd have to do that. But for me, that's like a different type of art than this, which is more meditative, I suppose, where I'm sort of going after something more like a painter would go after a subject. I'm stalking a lot more. Like when I was looking at this pile of wood and debris, I mean, it's not a great image in composition, but it's something that I went around and around and around looking for just the right kind of setup. I wasn't just banging these images out. I made one image, and this is it. So, but I did, again, I did a lot of composition. I wanted to make it right. And again, more like a painter would approach a subject, because you have an investment, you have a canvas, which is synonymous with the film, and you have to sort of look at this a different way. So I think if you see this more like a painter would see a canvas in that art form, I think you're going to be more in a better way, I think, as far as how you justify costs, because it doesn't feel to me like photography in the modern sense. So that's essentially my findings at the end of this little journey here. I'm going to continue to adjust this camera and modify it until it's something I like. It's heavier than I'd like, but at the same time, it's like, what do I expect? I mean, I'm not gonna do large hikes with this. It still doesn't fold up, which I need to fix at some point by modifying the bellows, or I'll leave this one intact and build a new one. I don't know. The ground glass too, I'm refining that a little bit as I go. I made 2 of them, and I think I want to play with the grind a little bit, because I still feel like it's not as bright as it could be. So that's something I'm working on. So this really it. In the end, I think it's a lot of fun. But as far as the camera's concerned, this is done. This is a done, fully functioning. I wouldn't call it a work of art, but it is something that I'm really glad I did, and I'm glad I'm done with.